When did the Zionists hijack Israel and the Jewish dream?
They've controlled it from the beginning. David Ben-Gurion was working for the papacy. So James Wiseman was absolutely the agent of the Pope. They never, ever renounced Pius XII, who it was common knowledge was behind the SS. He had conquered that with Hitler. He knew all about the concentration camps in Poland, yet not one Zionist ever denounced or renounced Pius XII for his crimes. And if they would have been truly patriotic Jewish people wanting to have their own country, don't you think they would have?
There are, of course, many stories about Jews who were very active in the communist Bolshevik Revolution and subsequent decades in the old Soviet Union. Were these Jews or were they Zionists?
They were racially Jews and Zionists by political belief. And the Jesuits used their Masonic Jewish Zionists as the front men for their Bolshevik Revolution. Lenin was partly Jewish. Stalin, his name, Duglavishi, means son of a Jew. So they used many upfront Jews to carry out their Inquisition in Russia, but the Jesuits controlled the Bolshevik Revolution through certain Jesuits like Bishop Ropp.
What does your research show in terms of who financed the Bolsheviks and the whole revolution there?
Well, we know that Jacob Schiff was a Masonic Jewish Zionist. He financed it from New York. But we also know it was financed by the Federal Reserve Bank and 120 Broad Street, which was that whole cartel of super capitalists there financing the Bolshevik Revolution for at least $1 million or more.
Oh, at least I think it was more than that. But Jacob Schiff's name came up recently. Al Gore's daughter married Jacob Schiff's grandson, I believe.
I see. Well, Al Gore is definitely tied to the Masonic Jewish Zionists, not only through the Schiffs then, if that's who he married, but also through Armand Hammer. Armand Hammer had free ingress and outgo all throughout the communist empire from the days of Lenin to the days of Gorbachev. Armand Hammer was the exclusive agent for Ford Motor Company to bring in Fords and tractors. He handled all the business there. But what we're not told is that when he built his Hammer House and that international trade mart there in Moscow, guess who financed it? The Bank of America, the Jesuits Bank of America.
A.P. Giannini, former head of the Bank of America.
Right.
Okay, let's talk about a tangled web indeed. It's amazing, but when you get to the perspective that Eric John Phelps has, it begins to look very cohesive and coherent. Okay, let's go. Go ahead.
I add one more thing if I can, Jeff.
Yeah, sure.
The Bolshevik Revolution was made deliberately to look Jewish so that they could raise up Adolf Hitler and the fascists in Western Europe to have this huge crusade into Russia called Operation Barbarossa for the purpose of killing all the Jews in Western Russia with the Einsack group and also murdering many Orthodox people who wouldn't convert to Catholicism.
Go ahead.
The Jesuits were in the wake of the Einsack group and were in charge of that, all four groups.
Will we ever find out the even 1/10 of the true involvement of the Church of Rome in World War II? It's one of the. It seems to be one of the most closely guarded secrets of them all.
It's a very closely guarded secret, but there have been several authors that have written quite a bit on it. Edmund Parrish wrote The Secret History of the Jesuits. He also wrote The Vatican Against Europe. It was released in 1965, 64. We have the works of Avro Manhattan with the Vatican-Moscow Alliance and the Vatican and world politics. He was a very prolific writer. There are several excellent writers who have revealed these things.
Wow. All right. Okay, let's go back a little bit and talk more about the Jesuits. Now, the most powerful man on the planet, in your estimation, is the so-called Black Pope.
Right. Peter Hans Kolvenbach.
All right. Peter
Hans Kolvenbach.
Kolvenbach. Tell us about Mr. Kolvenbach.
Mr. Kolvenbach is, of course, the Jesuit general. He commands his staff, which consists of his assistants, 7 or 8 of them. One of them is his confessor. Another one is his advisor. And then
excuse me. Does he actually have a confessor in the traditional sense of the term?
Well, yes. It's kind of his advisor, confessor to keep his conscience in order.
Huh.
Yes, he has a confessor. He has
kind of like a commissar in-house.
He has an advisor, and then he has his assistants that are over various continents. And then underneath those assistants are the provincials. The provincials report to their assistant. The assistants report then to the Jesuit general. And that's how they keep tabs on all the intelligence and what's going on in all the nations of the world. This particular Jesuit general speaks 8 languages, one of them being Arabic, another being Hebrew, I believe. He was stationed in the Middle East for 17 years, and he's the perfect man to coordinate this war. So this
keeps a pretty low profile, doesn't he?
Very low profile, because that's part of the secrets. That's one of the secrets of being successful.
Mm-hmm. Where is he headquartered in New York?
You know, he's headquartered right outside the walls of the Vatican. He's within Vatican City proper. He's right outside the walls of the Vatican. He's called the head of the Jesuit Curia, or Borgo di Santo Spirito, the village of the Holy Spirit.
I thought there was an agency in New York that...
I'm sure there's a connection.
Not a high-profile thing, but all right. Okay, very good. Peter Hans Kolvenbach, The Black Pope. Eric John Phelps is my guest. His book, The Vatican Assassins, 877-280-2866. Be right back. Okay, right back with Eric John Phelps. Eric, there is a story running around that has been in the shadows for years. I heard about it a long time ago. Has to do with the Ashkenazic invasion, and the Ashkenazi, so-called Ashkenazi Jews, or the Khazars. I got a nice email from a gentleman who has written up a one-page history. Bob Taft wrote it, and let me just read the first part of it and see how it fits with your research. This is from Bob Taft. I'll just quote it here. It is often suggested that there were no Palestinians to speak of in Palestine when the Rothschilds bankrolled the Ashkenazic invasion and occupation led by Irgun and the Stern Gang in 1948 to create a trouble spot for future political capitalization. In fact, there were close to 1 million Muslim and Christian Arab people forced from their homeland of 1,300 years into crowded refugee camps in Syria, Jordan, Lebanon, and the Gaza Strip. In caves in Palestine, squatters rose near large Arab cities and the slums of the cities themselves, where they barely existed for years afterward. The fact was, these people, called Jews, a word that came into use around the time of the King James Bible, aside from their adoption of a religious belief system that had once been prevalent in the area, had absolutely no business being there. They were not Semitic, but were of Turkic Mongol extraction, descendants of the people of the ancient kingdom of Khazaria, who adopted Judaism about 740 A.D. as a defensive measure, hoping it would neutralize them from Christian pressures from the north and west, as well as Muslim antagonism from the east and the south. So he's saying that these people in Khazaria, the Khazars, or Khazars, adopted Judaism about 740 A.D. as a defensive measure, trying to keep the Christians and the Muslims off their backs. It didn't, however, work, and they largely migrated westward into Europe, losing their national identity as Khazars, but retaining a religious one, not really their own. As the Jewish Encyclopedia stated over 50 years ago, 95% of the Jewish people don't have a drop of the blood of Israel in their veins. As recently as 100 years ago, there was still considerable antipathy on the part of Sephardic Jews, descendants of the real Judeans, against the Ashkenazic interlopers, descendants of the Khazars. Interesting history, very tightly encapsulated there. What do you think of it?
Okay, I've researched that somewhat, and I use my old Encyclopedia Britannica of 1903 that's on the Pope's Holy Office of the Inquisition's list of forbidden books.
Is it really?
Absolutely. That's why they've completely revamped the whole Encyclopedia Britannica for the last 70 years. If you get the old edition, published at the turn of the century, they have 25 pages on the Jesuit order.
Huh.
In there, if you look up Khazaria, you will find that there were many Jews who lived in Khazaria. Khazaria was a Gentile nation composed of white Gentiles, and there were also black Gentiles there. There were also Jews there who conducted commerce.